Hello and welcome to the FLAPtv Debate Series 2019. Last week we had what we told you was our last debate, so I guess this is our next to the last debate. Last week we learned that there was an effort for a write-in for Ken Ricker, who put up quite the challenge last time out against incumbent Mayor Dean Mazzarella in Leominster. On October 29th, we extended an invitation to Mr. Ricker and Mayor Mazzarella to attend the debate. Again, that was on October 29th. Today around 3 p.m. I received a statement from Mr. Ricker responding to the debate invitation, and I will read the response. It said, "While I appreciate your efforts in trying to put a last-minute debate together, I thought it was clear I was not a candidate or campaigning. Since the 2017 election, people have come up to me and mentioned they voted for me, and I will vote for you again. When you messaged me on Tuesday and said you heard through back channels there is a write-in effort going on, I mentioned to you I had been hearing this also and received some text messages about it. Then the Sentinel calls me on Saturday and says resources from the community have made them aware of a write-in effort. I told them of some efforts as well as you had messaged me, and they know you. I now have the mayor calling me un-American and disingenuous. I have never spoken any ill will toward anyone, and at no time have I campaigned or asked for attacks on my character. In 2017, I lost the election by 98 votes as a 30-day write-in candidate. It truly was democracy at its finest, a historical feat that is still under state investigation. I was very proud of that effort, and after the recount was over, I was extremely proud of people that helped me, how they acted and how they presented themselves. It seems as though now people want to become negative and toxic, which always seems to bring out the worst in people. This is not who I am or what I represent. You of all people should know this, as we have known each other since grade school. The citizens of Leominster are going to the polls tomorrow to exercise their free right. People know who I am and what I stand for. Best of luck to all the candidates tomorrow. Feel free to post this." So I went ahead and read that. That was his statement. Mr. Ricker decided not to show up today. From a personal perspective, for FLAPtv, as the founder of FLAPtv, what I can tell you is that the reason we started this program and started the Facebook group is to bring democracy out in the light and to give everyone a voice. We have hosted 7 debates this election season in Fitchburg. We had 19 candidates participating in contested races. All of them showed up. Debates have been around since the 6th century, back to ancient Greece, the Athenian times. There have been great debates throughout our history that have really changed the shape and the course of human events, whether we go to Lincoln Douglas, Kennedy Nixon, among many others. And the debates are something that voters expect and a way to really bring democracy out in the open. So that is a platform that we have embraced here. And from our perspective, we invited this debate to happen here, even though it was late in the season. Once we learned that there was a write-in effort, and it was acknowledged that there was an organized write-in effort, I reached out to Mr. Ricker. Mr. Ricker did acknowledge that he had heard the same thing, denied that he was involved. However, the following day, he publicly made a statement to the Fitchburg Sentinel saying that if he is elected, he will accept and he will serve, and talked about change being needed in the city. So at that point, even if he wasn't a candidate up to that point, making that statement that he would accept, that he would resign his job with the school department and proudly serve as mayor, that gave a green light to voters. That was certainly an acceptance of the effort. So when Mayor Mazzarella then challenged him to a debate and called on me to facilitate it. I felt it was appropriate at that point to extend the invitation since he had, even though not an active candidate, certainly one that's participating in the electoral process, and certainly a viable candidate coming within 100 votes of the last election. So we moved forward. I am not going to cast judgment on Mr. Ricker not showing up, even though debates have been a pretty solid part of our tradition. Things do change. Strategies change, and candidates and campaigns need to make their own decisions on what works best for them. But Mayor Mazzarella did show up, and I did read Mr. Ricker's response, so I will allow Mayor Mazzarella to offer his response to that statement and anything else he wants to say with us tonight.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. And you're right. You were once a candidate. There is...
against you.
Pulling your papers for office, and I learned a lot. Believe me. Trust me. I'm a different... Wouldn't you say I'm a different person than
I think we both are.
Then? Right.
Yeah.
So there's, to me, pulling your papers for office is a big deal. And it's sort of like boot camp, because when you pull your papers, there's a sense of passion, a sense that I can help my community. That's most candidates. That's their sort of MO, right? And then you go about the process of collecting signatures. And each person, you ask them. It's very humbling, right? You say, could I, you never know what they're going to say sometimes. And people are very honest when they're in that position and will tell you exactly how they feel. And sometimes they're fine, I'll sign it. But oftentimes, it's a chance to hear the issues from the very people who might not always have the opportunity to weigh in on what they think is important. What issues affect them when they open their front door. And that is part of the process. Raising money, posture suppers, holding signs, banging on doors. All of that, to me, is a bit, is part of the democratic process. That's always how it's been done here. Now, you always get some person that's, in history that, went in and they wrote in Mickey Mouse, or somebody got 6 of their relatives to write them in. That's always happened. I spoke to a reporter yesterday morning. He does some radio, and but he's been writing, political stuff for 32 years. I've never seen this. I've never seen this. This is the historic part of a historic moment. Is I've never seen this, where there's people supposedly that are out there who are looking to make somebody a candidate who says it's not a candidate. But the reality is, it was his sister that was sending these underground posts down that said, "Let's start an underground movement. Let's write in Kenny Ricker's name." Now, if you're not talking to your own sister, and then his friends, family members, all these other people, how I know this is, a lot of his people that are good friends with him, and they're still his friends, sent me this post. And the reason they did is they said, I'm Kenny's friend and everything, but I don't agree with this kind of if I guess you want to call it campaigning or whatever. I don't believe, and that's how I found out about it. And so, I never called. I think he's suggested that I called him anti-American, and that I didn't. If you really read what I said, as I said, this kind of a process is. This is stuff that happens in other countries. Other countries, you hear about these kinds of things happening. So what's un-American is there are no races here in the city. And that's because, for some reasons, maybe people don't have the time to give, right? It's a lot of work. A lot of nights you're out there, school committee meetings, when it's really cold and windy, it seems like it's, the day after the storm when the wind kicks in and it's cold. That seems to be when meetings are. And there's all kinds of things that are going on that you have to attend. And so some people may just say, I don't have that time to make that commitment. But I think overall, people would agree in most cases that the city's in pretty good hands and things are pretty good. So people are pretty happy with, maybe not in Washington, but maybe here locally, people seem pretty happy with their local government. And so that is why there isn't. But we also know that means a low turnout. And so I think for this kind of an approach, and I'll see if I can find this, because this was actually a letter. This was actually in the Worcester Telegram, and I hope I can find it. I did bring it with me, and hopefully I didn't leave it in the car, but I'm sorry, I don't want to fumble through all these papers here, but let me just read this to you. I kind of decided to run in August, and my campaign team wanted me to start right away. This is in 2017.
This is from Mr. Ricker?
Correct.
Okay.
This was taken out of the Telegram, November 16th, 2017. I kind of decided to run in August, and in August, papers are due in August, so you can still pull your papers in August and still get them turned in. And my campaign wanted me to start right away, but I disagree with them, Mr. Ricker said. Dean has always dominated the position, and anybody who ever ran against him, he'd beat by a big margin. The traditional way of campaigning didn't work. I wanted to come in late and gain momentum. I waited and announced I was running as a write-in candidate October 3rd and did exactly what I wanted to do. We built momentum and got a lot of people's attention by coming into the election so strong, and we kept building. Mr. Ricker said he did not debate Mr. Mazzarella, who's in his 12th term, is the state's longest serving mayor. And I quote, "I wasn't out debating or doing speaking engagements," Mr. Ricker said. "I knew what I was doing." That was a plan. And I think what upsets people is February 4th, Mr. Ricker came to City Hall. This is the first day you could pull your nomination papers. On the first day, and went down to the clerk's office.
Year?
Yes, and left. Came back another time and left. May 17 of 19, Kennedy for Mayor Facebook. Now, this went from write-in candidate to candidate.
Do we know why he went to the city clerk's office?
We don't. Okay. I don't. I'm just saying, this is the first day. So you could easily pull his papers then, right? But May 17th, he posted out, he's looking to increase the people. So he sends out a like my page on the website on May 17, 2019. Now this is in May, and saying like my Facebook page. The Facebook page went from write-in Kenny Ricker to Kenny Ricker for mayor. So I think the problem is it goes from I am a candidate, I'm not. I'm interested in being a candidate. I'm going to run. I'm going to run a sticker campaign. No, I'm not going to run. Into this, and I think that is why people are upset. Being mayor means making a lot of decisions and making tough decisions. And I think that this is an important position for the city. The wrong person could do a lot of damage, especially today. It's not even the same as it was 20 years ago, 25. You could do a lot of damage for somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. It doesn't have the experience to be able to run the city. And you say, well, I didn't have any experience. If you watch, they hired 22 new town managers, city managers across the state. You can't even get your application in unless you have experience, right? I mean, because experience counts today. It really does. You just have to know what you're doing. There's too many moving parts of running a city or a town. And so just to get, if you watch an interview or read about an interview of a town hiring a manager, they want to know, so do you have experience in municipal finance? What is your experience with labor law? What is your experience with the state's highway gas tax program, right? Getting Chapter 90 money. What's your experience with the foundation budget? That's what they want to know. Those are all things that people have a right to know, questions to ask. So I think where people are upset is that there was a group working now I'm not making it up, these aren't my words. Their words are underground. They're running an underground campaign. That's upsetting to people. And doing it in anticipation of having a low turnout. And then Mr. Ricker saying, I'm a candidate, but I'm not. And if they need me, or I guess there's this groundwell of support, and people are really looking to get out, and maybe if they want to, if they elect me, I'll come and serve. Well, that doesn't show any kind of, I don't think, passion about, I really want this job. This really means a lot. I really think I could bring some ideas. That's why people are upset. I didn't say it was he's disingenuous, or that he's anti-American. I said the process that they're using is. So I just want to make sure that's clear. I by no stretch of the imagination did I say or mean that.
Okay. Do you think that, and because I've heard it brought up from a few people, that there were some people that did take out papers, both city council and school committee, that have in the past been associated with that faction, that never turned, that ended up not turning them in, that
That's
changed
correct.
their mind?
That is correct.
So there was a thought out there that
it was deliberate.
It was deliberate. They cleared the field to intentionally create
sure
a
that
scenario where
nobody
there's a
came to
very
the
low
polls.
voter turnout.
Yes.
So they could do this. Do you think that that's a possibility, or do you think this is just something that was
Yes.
they used, or was it something that the the word grassroots that just happened in the past few days.
It's definitely a possibility. Let me also tell you that people like Frank Cohen, people on, who are on social media, Tom Kanakia, he was at City Hall every day, 4 out of 5 days a week, going through one office or another, looking for I'm not sure what. Frank Cohen, there were these regular people that were posting on Facebook. Then all of a sudden, Kenny's Facebook page, website goes down. All of a sudden, Tom Kanakia stops coming to City Hall. All of a sudden, Tom Kanakia stops coming to meetings. All of his supporters, his core group of people, stop interacting in every way possible to give the illusion, again, is it possible? I'm not being paranoid. It's a possibility. The illusion that they're done, they're not running, he's not interested. He wants to be with his kids and his family, which is great. He's happy where he is, and that's the illusion. And there's going to be no campaign, and they've moved on to other things. And then all of a sudden, this, which we found about it, last week. So it's very consistent with this that I just read you. This was done by design. He says in his own words that he kind of decided he was going to run in August, but he put it off. They wanted him to start running right away. He waited till October 3rd. Why do you do that? I mean, if you're going to campaign, you're going to campaign because you want the job. So he's saying his strategy was to wait last minute. So now people are saying, well, you even think that October 3rd in 17 was too soon. So now you really waited to the last minute. And I don't think people really find it credible to say he didn't know anything about it. In other words, everybody around him was sending these, private messages through Facebook. Everybody. And they're all people he knows, including some family members, but he didn't know. He didn't know. He says, I didn't know. I have a clue what was going on. That's the problem. So what have they done? Let's get to the next step. So what's the last tactic? They haven't been able to, everybody's watching social media, like they can't take on one issue, like the police station isn't going, the schools aren't properly funded, we don't have good schools, there's crime in the streets, nothing. So what are they back to? The campaign of 2017. What are they suggesting? There's corruption. There's corruption. And I spoke today for the first time to the state campaign office.
So we're talking about, just to put some perspective, we're talking about the election of 2017 where there were allegations from the other camp that there may have been mishandled ballots.
Correct.
The state has been investigating that. There's been a lot of aspersions cast on social media that there may have been some shenanigans involved in that, and that he was cheated out of the election. So, again, and again, we invited Mr. Ricker here. I'm sorry this isn't a two-way conversation, so we can hear both sides. That's what we try to do on this show. But he chose not to show up. So I'm gonna,
well, I mean, I think what they're down to now, I think, in my opinion, a little bit of a desperate situation, right? They were running this so-called, in their words, not mine, they're running this underground operation. Somehow or another, somebody notified the press, so now they get found out about it, right? Now they've been had. I mean, basically people learned that this was going on, and it didn't look so good when people found out about it, and it turned negative. So then Kenny steps up when he's asked about it, says, I don't know anything about it, but if if enough people go in, I'll take the job. Okay? And they're left with, people aren't buying that, so we need something else. So immediately this morning, and I predicted this, I mean, I hate to say it, but this is just way too predictable here. If you've been in the business long enough, it's just way too predictable. So this morning, and I told my staff, everybody last night, tomorrow morning we're going to wake up and they're going to start in on the last campaign stuff. And I called the state today for the first time. I never intervened. I never asked a question. There was an attorney representing the city, never asked her a question, never wrote any letters, nothing. I stayed out of it because I didn't want anybody to suggest that somehow or another, I'm involved in this and this is a conspiracy. Because that's obviously, in my opinion, the avenue that they're going to take. So I called today and I said, by not releasing your investigation, it hurt me because they're suggesting that somehow or another I'm involved in this big corruption. That's what people in the community think. And I spoke to Michelle Tassinari from the state. And she says, we have communicated with Mr. Ricker in some cases every day. In fact, remember, he's not a candidate. But here's a letter, the most recent letter, and I'll give you this so you can read it. It says, given the recent news reports that Mr. Ricker is doing a write-in campaign in tomorrow's election, we wanted to make sure that you had the most recent correspondence with him. They felt it fair because I called and said, they're using this against me, right? They're using this against me, and I wasn't involved in any of this at all. In fact, who do the clerks work for? The city council. They don't work for the mayor. I mean, it's the only department within the city that doesn't work for the mayor. So I have nothing to do with this. And if I was ever asked by state police or the DA's office or the Attorney General's office to cooperate, or they thought somehow or another I was involved, I'd be more than willing to sit with them. But I think it's very interesting that on October 1st, now this is when he's not a candidate, on October 31st at 12:56 on a Thursday, during the workday, there's a correspondence sent to Kenny explaining to him once again that they're almost done. I mean, I can read it. I mean, it would just take up a whole lot of time here. But basically what they've said is, since then, there's been another election. There was a state election, correct?
2018.
And they watched it. They sent in auditors, they sent all these people in, and they had attorneys there, and they had observers, just to make sure the process was right. But even since then, Kevin, we've replaced all the machines. Everything is state-of-the-art. Everything has been changed. That's what the state said. And she said something very interesting today. She said no campaign was being investigated and no candidate was ever being investigated. And see, by them not issuing some sort of a report basically saying, oh, you guys needed the machines or anything, they're not saying, they didn't say anything. That gives them the opportunity to make it up. So what did they do this morning? Di Bedoin, Tom Kanaki, what did they do right away, as predicted? What do they do? Right away this morning, start in on, leading people to believe this investigation, John Pacone, retired firefighter, starts right in telling the retirees, insinuating that we're trying to get this, but we can't get it, and this is important information. They're implying is that somehow or another I'm involved in some corruption. And that's not true, not one single bit. They never were investigating me. They were never investigating my campaign, ever, not for 2 years. And I've been told, Kevin, I've been under the impression that there's this big investigation going on and somehow or another they're looking into something, but nobody ever talked to me. So when I asked the question, they're like, no, that's silly. We've told him, she said, her words, he calls sometimes every day. I also want to quote her. This is what she said, that he said he wanted the investigation so he could use it to kick off his campaign. That's a quote. And I have 7 other witnesses that, I think maybe 5 witnesses, said that he wanted the report so he could use it for his campaign kickoff announcement. So that's as much as I know, and I learned this today because I wanted to call them and say, I wish you issued the report because they're using the report against me. And then she issued this letter right here to me this morning saying, because she clearly didn't know that nobody else knew that he contacted them last week and he got a letter from them last Thursday, the very day that he wasn't a candidate, the very day that he didn't know anybody else was trying to run him for mayor. I mean, so something's wrong here, and if anybody knows, and this isn't going to be shown till later on, please come forward with the information that somehow or another I was involved in some sort of conspiracy or corruption. Do this starting tonight, 2 in the morning, whatever. Call Cliff or somebody from the Sentinel or the Telegram or yourself, and provide that documentation to show that. Show that somehow or another I was under investigation of some sort, anything.
Well, I can tell you that
substantiate your facts. What I'm saying is back it up. Don't just say it, back it up.
The third question that I had tonight, once again, I just, it's tough when we're only hearing one side tonight because that's not what we usually, that's not what we do on the show.
I'm providing documents
but
here. You can read this into the record if you want.
My third question tonight in the debate was going to be, and I'll read it verbatim, there has been a lot of innuendos and aspersions regarding the handling of ballots in the 2017 election. So let's put it out on the table now. Let's be direct and air it out. Mr. Ricker, do you believe that Mayor Mazzarella or someone on the behalf of the mayor illegally interfered with the handling of ballots and cheated you out of the election? So that was a question.
And let's take it a step further.
And
if you accuse somebody of something, You better be able to back it up. Everything I read here tonight, I backed up. I read his statement to the newspaper, to the Telegram and Gazette. I'm giving you a copy of their letter that they gave him. Now, they thought it was justifiable that he's running. They thought, I think it was very fair to be able to issue this letter today because they're using this against me. Okay? And that's not fair. I mean, that's not true. So I'm all ears. If somebody has information, please provide it, because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to prove it.
Well, it's also kind of a tenet of our democracy also to be able to face your accuser. So
I'm asking tonight to face my accuser, and whoever they are and wherever they are. You can comment on this page. Please, by all means, come up with this information, because I'm sure the Sentinel and Enterprise and the Telegram and FLAP would love to publish this before tomorrow's election, so people know exactly, if there's information, then no problem at all. I mean, I have no issue at all.
Well, one of the problems of social media these days is that aspersions can be made, innuendos can be made, accusations can be made, but to actually have the accuser and the accusee sit across from each other and air it out and say, okay, let's talk about it is important. And that's, I think, another one of the reasons why debates are important to our electoral process.
Kevin, I've been mayor for 26 years. I'm proud of what I've done. I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. I'm a different person than I was even when I started. I was a 35-year-old kid, I had a lot of, energy, and I was willing to take on issues, and I was trying to work in a system that didn't want to, or wasn't set up to move as fast as it was. But in February of 1993, I decided I was going to run. And I talked to my friends, and we discussed it, and I decided I was going to run. And that was in February. And I began knocking on doors, and I did all the things that you do, and Sue Shalafo did, and Peter Angelini, and everybody that's ever run for mayor or for elected office did. I hit the streets. I used to spend, there was no internet. I used to go over and microfiche stuff at the library, and I went back 30 years. So I could have a good understanding of what was going on. I was involved in a ton of community things. I was a police officer, but I got involved with Barry Anson. We were the first people around who took on the issue of AIDS. Nobody even wanted to talk about the subject, let alone the police or anybody else. Nobody really knew much about it. We really wanted to help educate the area, help people who had been inflicted by it, help to someday find a cure for it. We worked on things that nobody else really wanted to touch. Neighborhood issues, I helped find with others the East Side Neighborhood Association. That's where I was from, that's where I lived, that's where my passion was. And I went out to every event there was, shaking hands. There was no Facebook. You had to get out in the streets, right? And I did all that. And as you remember, later on, I ended up having to take a leave of absence in the month of August. I went without health insurance. I went without a pay. But I was really passionate
from the police department.
Yes, from what I was doing. And I had little kids. My kids were 8 and 9 years old, right? We had some medical issues in the family, so I paid over $1,000 a month in 1993 for health insurance. And because I had none, nothing. I had zero. And I pounded the pavement, and I got other people to jump in on board. We made our own signs. We did our own polling. We did phone calls. We did coffees. We did it all. We worked really, really, really hard to do that. And I think I've taken that same work ethic. And I worked. Do you know? I was trying to hit the city twice, and on the night before the election, I hit the Whalen district. And it had almost hit the whole city twice, but I just couldn't quite do it. It just poured that last week or so, and I just wasn't able to get out there. I was drenched. I lived on Snapple. Snapple's the only thing. I weighed, I don't know, I probably weighed about 150 pounds, but I was passionate, and I really wanted to do this, and I really thought I could make a difference in the community. But I don't think that stopped after I became a candidate. I think once I get elected, I've kept up that same pace for 26 years. I've had an open door policy. I didn't take the door off because it's a beautiful door, but anybody that's ever wanted to come in, unless somebody was in, and even then, I've stepped outside if it was something minor. I've taken phone calls. Everybody's had my cell phone number forever, 978-835-6643. Everybody's had it. I get texts in the middle of the nights. I help out people who are sleeping in cars, who need a hotel, people that run into situations late at night. I'm out in the community all the time. I'm on social media. I do my own show on cable. I'm on the radio. And even if somebody opens a letter, I'm there. I mean, a grand opening, anything. I go to wakes, funerals, if there are people I know or people that will call and say, my father was a big fan, you think I could come?
Let me ask you this, Mayor.
Work ethic for 26 years.
Let me ask you this, Mayor, because in fairness now, that's the way it's always been done, the gathering the signatures, the walking,
Yes.
the knocking on doors, the
Yes.
flyer. But times have changed. Social media has changed a lot of it. So what your opponents will say, what the people supporting this write-in campaign will say, is that, you know, it's not illegal what's being done. They are networking, just in a different way. They're networking high-tech, they're networking through social media. They may not be doing it out in the open, but it's not illegal.
You just said it. It's whether it's legal or not, it's the perception.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Is this a way to, is this the future? Is this a model for the future?
Absolutely not. People are so upset. Really, I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll find out, you know, tomorrow during the election, but so many people said, I got to be honest with you, Dino, I wasn't going to come. Somebody came into City Hall today, wanted an absentee ballot for their mother and father who were ill, and they were going to go get it, have them fill it out, bring it back, and they said, no, they have to come in. They went home and got their, you know, their mother and father, brought them back down to City Hall, and that's, I don't think that this is the way. People are going to use social media. But you obviously see Facebook, they've pulled back, they won't let you run ads. Twitter has already said it, right?
Yeah.
So as much as we got into it, everyone's pulling back on it. Kevin, this is all of the things that all of the events that I've been to after hours. Now, I'm not talking about workday. These are after hours for 2018 and 2019. That isn't going to change. Facebook can't get you to an event. You might be able to stream it. But Facebook can't get you to a kids play, or it can't get you to the Feldman event, or an autism event, or the Taste of Leominster, or it can't get you to night meetings and all that.
Cannoli Fest.
Cannoli Fest. And the Festival of Trees, and talking to the kids at the Boys and Girls Club, or attending scouting events. Facebook or social media can't do that. Being on the ground and letting people know that what you're doing in our community is important, and the mayor thinks so, and he's going to be at those events.
But as a way of campaigning, things are changing.
Well, I would suggest that if we're going to run underground campaigns, and I didn't use the word, they do. I know the Sentinel used the headline, grassroots, but that's not what they said. They didn't say in their message, you know, their Facebook message, they used the word underground campaign. People hear the words underground and campaign, and you pair that up with government. In other words, say underground campaign and government at the same time, and you already soured everybody. So whether it's legal or not, you've already soured people's understanding of, I mean, they're already upset at hearing those words, underground and government, all in one. Because people feel, well, that's what you're doing during a campaign. Why I read this, Kevin, is because I took what I did during the campaign, and I kept going with that. And if this is how you're going to run your campaign, some people think, is that how you're going to run the city? Later on, underground, government, campaign, that's how you're going to do it? People have the right to ask a candidate questions. Even since 2 years ago, there are questions about it. Last time, they only had a month to ask questions, and he didn't answer them. Yeah, there were a lot of other people answering these questions. He clearly couldn't tell he wasn't answering. But now he had a chance to ask. He's had 2 years to decide, I'm going to run for mayor. 2 years. And so people have the right to say, so where do you stand on I don't know, whatever issue it is. Where do you stand on, you know, fixing, you know, building fields behind the high school? Where do you stand behind a dual tax rate? Where do you stand on more money for the schools? Where do you stand on these issues? People have the right to know before they have.
Well, the last sentence in his statement was, "People know who I am and what I stand for." Do you think that? Do you think that's an accurate statement?
No, because he hasn't been vetted. And when you're vetted, that's an opportunity. When you're vetted, that's an opportunity so people know. I know where this person is on the issue. And the thing is, when there are a lot of new people in town. A lot of new people love moving into town. They might know where I am on the issues. So tonight was supposed to be an opportunity, or even during the campaign, right? Even though I was running unopposed, I had to get my nomination papers filled out. That's a good chance for people to know, where are you on this issue here? When's Route 12 going to get fixed? What's going on at Route 13? It's still dangerous up there. Are you guys ever going to build those fields behind the high school? What's going on with the police station? That's an opportunity for us to engage, and so they know what's going on. So I'll have a conversation about, hey, you know, my taxes keep going up. I'm like, come on in. We'll sit down with any one of the 3 assessors and we'll go over your tax bill. There's a chance they made a mistake. But often, and that's the other thing is oftentimes people won't have known this complex tax system in Massachusetts that in Massachusetts passed a law called Prop 2.5. You cannot exceed your budget by more than 2.5% increase each year. So when somebody says my taxes went up 100%, how could they have if it only can go up by law by 2.5%? Well, the answer sometimes is that you're living in a property, like if you live in a ranch. I lived in a ranch. All of a sudden, you know, everybody wants to live in a ranch now.
Right.
So value caused that increase. The city council didn't, nor did the mayor. Not even the budget caused that. So those are the kinds of things that you have questions with. And so I had, I was on I was on with either LPZ or PLZ, but we were just having a conversation about taxes, and I said, one of the things that I want to see is that, especially for the elderly, is to be able to get a tax abatement. So right now, if you're elderly or disabled, you get a tax abatement. I want to increase that because that would give them a better opportunity. Because let's face it, people make more money now than they did before. If people worked in a factory or a mill and worked in the service business or whatever it be. They're living in a house that's worth so much money, but they're not making that kind of money. So one of the things I would say, if you had a debate or somebody asked a question, and they do when I'm walking and asking people for signatures, how do you feel? You know, how do you feel? I'm struggling. Then my answer is that the town of Concord and some other communities are trying to get this legislation passed through so that we can increase the amount of the exemption. Mm-hmm. That would help people stay in their homes. So that's the kind of thing and information that you get out in a debate.
Well, let me ask you a question, because it used to be that challengers would be the one demanding debates, and incumbents would kind of try to be skirting those debates. The challenger would always want the debates. I'm talking about in general. I'm talking about in general. That incumbents would be the ones trying to shy away, and the challengers are demanding more and more debates. This year, we see in Gardner, Mayor Hawk, his opponent, longtime Mayor Hawk, his opponent, declined to debate. He didn't want to show up. And then we issued the debate challenge or debate invitation today, and unfortunately, Mr. Ricker declined. So what's changing? Why are incumbents want to be the ones that are engaging in the challenge?
What I said is I spent so much time at the library pumping quarters and dimes into that machine, making copies for microfiche at the library, going through all the old newspapers so I'd have a good grasp of history. History teaches you so much, right? Mark Bedanza just wrote his book. You could read that. There's so much history in there. So I want to have a grasp for that. Maybe some people don't want to do the homework. It's a lot of work to get brought up to speed so that you can talk about taxation, and so you can talk about the fact that Leominster has a sizable stabilization.
Will voters accept candidates bypassing debates and using social media?
Absolutely not. They won't do it. They want to hear. This is their chance to basically to interview and find out. To say, well, everybody already knows who I am. Not everybody knows, believe me. As much as somebody may think everybody already knows who I am and what I stand for, that's not true. My friends do, and close family, and some people that have been here for 20-something years, but a lot of people don't. And that doesn't mean that if what they knew I stood for yesterday changes today when you ask me a question about how do you feel about a particular thing, right? I mean, let's face it, right? I think in the last campaign, one of the things that he said is something about we're a gateway city. And that's a negative look on things. No, it isn't. It's the state recognizing that older mill communities have had a big disadvantage and that we needed a little bit of help. We got $20 million in grants by being a gateway city. And the other thing is we've really taken that money and it was used as like seed money to help you out so that you get back in competition. And we've done, do you realize every factory building, old mill building in the city is full, and last one is under renovation now, and there's one small one that's going to be under renovation. They're full. Do you realize that we have excess levy capacity? And that's the chance for somebody to dialogue and say, you raise taxes too much. How could we have $114 million in excess levy capacity? There's only one way that could happen, because you didn't raise taxes every year to the fullest amount, even under Prop 2.5. That's a chance for us to dialogue about that stuff. How about the fact that during the recession, which really was pretty close to a depression at the time, it was the worst recession since the Great Depression.
Back 2008, you talked about
15,000 city municipal employees lost their job. None lost their job in the city of Leominster. Why? Because we started to put a little bit of money aside. so that we could weather our way through the recession. Now, the money that we had set aside in 2008 isn't clearly enough to get you through the tough times today, is
Right,
it?
you're talking about the stabilization fund.
Sure,
So this is
stabilization.
something that came up in the city council debates in Fitchburg and the mayor's debate we had in Fitchburg, because Fitchburg at one time had a stabilization account of about $10,000, and now they're up over $6 million. So DOR recommends 5% of a city's budget be put aside into the stabilization fund, which is used for emergencies, and it helps maintain a strong bond rating. Leominster is well above that. I believe Leominster is about a 16% of
We're
your
10
city
to
budget.
15%. Well, we're about 15%. But
What do you think is, what's the sweet spot? What percentage of our budget should the stabilization account reflect?
15 to 20%, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Moody's has changed everything. Things have changed. When a recession hits now, it's worse, right? Each one seems to be getting a little worse. We started off in 1980, somewhere around there. We went to the 90s, had another one. Each one gets a little worse. But climate change has changed everything. They want you to have money set aside. So when you have these ice storms, when you have floods, fires in California, they want you to be able to operate on your own, because the state and federal government aren't going to be able to help you out. You better have. Do you realize what $20 million is in stabilization? If the budget's $130 million, basically what do you spend in a month? $10 million a month, a little bit over that. $20 million is nothing. Right. Well, if you have to go 2 months because of the system shut down, and you had to pay people, and you had to continue to run local government, what would you have, right? You'd be in trouble.
So you wouldn't go under the 15% for stabilization, is what you're saying?
Well, if you had to. I mean, the whole point of it is, if we had to go through the recession again,
right,
and it hit,
but in good times,
then you'd have to go. No, I think it's comfortable. I think remember, the reason that we're double A2, and we're only one of 2 or 3 other communities in the whole county, and there are almost every one of those communities is richer than us.
Second highest bond rating in the Worcester County, correct?
Second or third, because I think one other is even with us. So let's say third, just for the sake of conversation. The only reason that we've got that, one of the reasons is because of our stabilization account. Now, if everything goes well when we go to permanent borrow for the police station, I believe, from looking at everything, if we continue to do everything that's right, stability and stability in municipal government and longevity and experience is going to help us, I think, get to the highest rating. That's my feeling. Everything I've seen and heard, that we will possibly reach that highest rating because we've done everything correctly. So and part of that is the stabilization.
The police station is going out. You're going out to bond probably about over $20 million for the
26,
police station
25,
project.
26, based on Medford. It's pretty much the same size police station. We've got a great committee together. We'll be doing demolition any day now.
So what do you say to taxpayers who complain that their property taxes keep going up, and you're going to be going out to bond for $25, $26 million?
We're not going to raise any money. We're not going to have a.
How does it impact?
We're not going to do a debt exclusion or an override. Okay. To build a station. We'll do it out of the existing budget. Now, did you know, Kevin, this is the other thing that debates will bring, is the state of Massachusetts under the foundation budget, it's a formula, right? That's what they call it, the foundation formula. In that formula is an assumption that your city or town went up.
Just for the viewers who may not understand the lingo, we're talking about the foundation funding. We're talking about Chapter 70 funds.
Chapter 70,
which is education.
The state puts this
public schools
formula together to fund schools. Yeah. How do they fund Arlington? How do they fund this? The one common denominator is that they make an assumption on that in that formula that you're going to raise taxes by 2.5. So if you don't, you're still obligated to give them that money for the formula, right? Part of the formula. So say it's 1.2 million is what you raise from a 2.5% increase. You're going to be required to still give that money to the schools. So if you don't give it to them, right? And you say, I'm going to give it back to the taxpayers. Where are you going to get that 1.2 million that you just gave back to the taxpayers, and you don't have it? Now you're going to be in violation of the foundation budget. So
one of the other holes or little problems with Proposition 2.5 also is that if you don't use it to go up your 2.5% levy one year, it's not like in a good year. It's not like when you're in a bad year you can go back and make it up.
That's what excess levy capacity is.
Yeah.
No, it is. You can actually go back. So if we wanted to spend another $114 million, we could. Imagine that. So it's $114 million cumulative that we didn't raise that we could have. So here's what I say to somebody that says taxes are too high, right? This doesn't make anybody feel any better, but right now it's about $6,000 the average tax bill in the state of Massachusetts. Here it's $4,900. What I would say is that there are a lot of people who are house rich, but didn't have, their retirement won't help them to stay there. And what I say about that is, that's where we want to help. That's where we need to help. We all need to step up and change the laws to increase the amount that you can get for your exemption that would allow you to stay in your house. The other thing is, there's this big controversy going on in Worcester about full-page ads in the Telegram about single tax rate. I don't know of anybody, Leominster still has a single tax rate for business and residential. I don't know of anybody that's going the other way. Worcester is getting, I mean, they haven't built a new manufacturing.
Fitchburg and Clinton are the only two in Worcester County that don't have a single tax rate, and Fitchburg's been moving toward it.
Right. What I'm saying is nobody's going back the other way,
Correct.
saying let's add more to the business.
Right.
And in the full page ad, it talked about how there hasn't been a new manufacturing building built in Worcester in I don't know how many years. They're building them in Westboro where they have a single tax rate. So these are the kinds of things, Kevin, that come up during a debate that people like yourselves and news people would ask questions like this, like, hey, what's taking so long to build those fields behind the high school? Another project that we're not going to raise taxes on. That project was supposed to be part of the project in the 60s when they originally built the school. And this is like the only high school of 2,000 students that can't go out to a recreational area there to use track or go for a walk and any of that. So, you know, those are the things that should come up, and you vet the candidate so that they understand fully when they go to the ballot box who exactly they're voting for and why.
Another question that we're going to bring up tonight, OPEB. Leominster, I believe, is the only municipality in the state that has the OPEB
Correct.
funding liability paid off.
Right.
Leominster made some tough decisions to get there, including the suspension of COLAs.
Right. For a few years.
For a few years.
Well, what happened is the state used to give
Right.
a cost of living increase.
Yeah.
Then they stopped it and said it's optional for communities.
But Leominster made some tough decisions, some
We
tough
did.
political decisions.
Very much so.
But the reward was, it's paid off now. So in order to remain in the black, with the state saying, well, you can charge more for health insurance, up to 50%. With COLAs, do you believe it's time to loosen the rein on the COLAs, or is that something we should still be taking a conservative approach on?
Well, for the last 3 years or whatever it was, the retirees got a COLA. Now, Kevin, that the system is funded, it now funds its own cost of living increase. Before, it was coming back to taxpayers. So in other words, the taxpayers were paying, so we were going further in debt. So it's like you owe, your house is worth $100,000, your payments are $1,000 a month, and you're paying $200, and you decide to go on vacation, trip around the world. It's like, what? The same sort of thing, same analogy. This thing is getting worse by the minute, and you're still taking money out of it to give raises when it's not fully funded. So now it funds itself. But let me just take it a step further. The retirees say, well, you didn't give us a raise for some of these years. But one thing we didn't cut back on, and other communities are doing, is they've changed the rate that retirees co-payment. So we didn't do that, Kevin. We have probably the richest Cadillac plan for retirees in the state. I want to make sure. So if it comes down to, do I give you a 3% increase on the first $12,000 you make, or do I really keep this Cadillac health insurance policy? Because most of the time, if you're retired, that's when things start to happen. I'm less concerned about your 3% increase, but I'm more concerned that we take care of your health care. That's the most important things. I mean, they pay almost nothing for prescriptions. If you go to the hospital, I mean, this is what we call, it's called the Cadillac plan. I was just involved in negotiations because I do arbitration and mediation for what's called the Joint Labor Management. It's a state organization which I've been working as an arbitrator mediator for 17 years. And I've built up a lot of experience. I've learned a lot from this. And so one community that I was working in, helping them to try to settle their contract, they are now going to charge, their co-payments for the employees are going to be higher. And the money that the city saves is going to go to pay the OPEB, the retirement. So more of it's come. That's not happening here. Newton, other communities across the state are actually talking about borrowing money, going to bond to borrow money to pay down the pension. I was in Worcester the other day where their pension liability is $1 billion and they're only 61% funded.
You can bond for things other than capital expenses now?
Well, because it's actually going to save them more money to pay off the pension, or at least pay it down, than it would be to not borrow. So they're going to borrow. It's going to cost them less to pay back the loan than it was to keep funding this liability. Each time, there's a little place in the budget of everybody's budget. You can see it. Nobody talks about it. Fitchburg, I know, talks about it, but very communities do, about how much more each year it's costing to fund this unfunded liability, and you're still not there, just to maintain it. That's coming from city services. So the city of Leominster is going to be sitting on, once we get, depending on how investments are, we're going to be sitting on a substantial amount of money that we can help. We could help in a situation where if the state changes what the exemption is for an elderly or disabled person, a retired person, to give them back more, that's going to help. It's going to give us more money, less money than when we have more money in those categories, we're going to actually have that money to spend on other things or to pay down other things.
So we've covered a lot of subjects tonight. Are there any other subjects we didn't cover that you'd like before we have you make a closing statement to the voters?
I think you covered just about everything that actually I had here.
Very good.
I think we covered it all. We have a number of construction projects. Last year we put $1 million extra in the fall in paving, on top of the Chapter 90 money that we get from gas tax. Then we put another $1 million in the spring. Then we doubled the amount that we did for Chapter 90. And no other communities double the amount of money that they're spending on roads. And I think it's pretty noticeable if you come through town. We're going to keep that up. Sidewalks, I mean, we've spent millions. City Council and I, a lot of times people think there are conflicts. You'd be surprised what there aren't conflicts in the City Council. We agree on a whole lot of things because I listen to what they say as well. I don't just discount. They're right there They're right there in the neighborhoods. They're right there pounding the flesh. And I listen and they're like, we need sidewalk. I mean, go up around Highland Ave, the hospital, down on 4th Street, Mechanic Street. I mean, really becoming noticeable. We're going to continue on with that. And I think that's really important to let people know. But Route 13 is going to get straightened out. There's $6 million allocated for that. That'll all be upgraded. Route 12 down by, all the way from the Sterling line, all the way down to the old Tucker Manufacturing, Marguerite Ave. That's funded and that's going to be reconstructed the whole way. Sidewalks, both sides, all the way to Sterling. We're also going to do that area in front of Water Tower Plaza. That's all going to be done. So there is so many projects. The bike trail project. Leominster has become a desirable place. They've listed us. One group has listed us as the top 5 most affordable communities in the state, and one group named us #1 most affordable community in the state. We're doing really well. Other towns and cities come to us for us to help mentor them, help them out. Best practices. We've been given a number of awards for the different things that we've done that other communities have done. DOR recommends people come to us, and we've actually stepped in a number of cases to help other communities out. So the city's in good shape. There's much more to be done. We're certainly not done yet. There's much more to be done. Water pipes that have to be replaced. There's so much more. There's always something to do. Okay. But we're in good hands. We're in the best shape that we've ever been. So I would like to ask the voters if they could go out tomorrow, if they see this, I would ask that you vote for me, that I've worked hard, I've listened to what you've had to say, I've worked across the lines of City Council, School Committee. At a time when the state came in and said, we'll help you renovate the high school, but we'll only give you $12 million. Myself and Nadine Binkley went to the state, and we fought until they gave us $45 million. When Mrs. Fratarelli was the superintendent of schools, her and I made a pledge. On a 3-year goal, we said we're going to be like the first city in the state or town to start full-day kindergarten at no cost to the parents. Everyone said it was impossible, wasn't going to get done. We proved it could get done. We certainly ran into problems with the past superintendent. They came up with a $1.7 million shortfall. We helped them, took care of that. Then, several months later, a $5 million problem in the budget. And I met with the superintendent that day. He said, I'm going to the school committee tonight, and I'm going to tell them we got a $5 million problem, and we're going to lay off 200 teachers. And I said, what? First of all, you're bringing this to me now. I need some time. I'm going to fix this, but it's going to take some time to fix. And he went ahead and school committee and everyone, and that just started off. Do you know how many teachers you think we actually laid off? Or staff we laid off from the budget cuts of supposedly the budget cuts of 2017.
You talk about when that whole
When the whole
one in
thing broke.
2017.
How many?
It was at the end of the day. I think very
Yes.
little, very
little.
few.
Very few.
Yeah.
But and this is the thing about debates. It would let the public know and the voters know that not 200 teachers lost it. You know what happened? That was, I think, my opinion, a big scare tactic. Either either we're going to have to come up with the money, we're going to lay all these people. We lost a lot of good teachers who said, I can't wait to find out what happens here. I can't. So they left the system, and that's too bad. But we've got everybody back. That year alone, I think we were around, at the end of the day, when the state gave us our final tally, the year that we had the budget crisis, we were $1.7 million over net school spending, over what we were required to give them. And again, very few layoffs at all. So we've changed things. We have a very good superintendent. She's keeping an eye on every penny. I think she's put the charge out. Nobody overspends for any reason at all. She's holding people accountable. She's holding herself accountable. And I think that's what's made the difference. So we're in good shape. Better things to come. I hope you believe in me. I hope you've watched everything that we've done. We've set up really good teams in the city. We have great teams of employees and volunteers. And I hope that you don't take one thing that maybe you disagree with me that happened over 26 years, but you take everything that we've done in our administration and consider that. And tomorrow when it's raining, it's a possibility of rain, and when it's not expected to have an election, and when it was expected that there's not a candidate, but there's a candidate, there's somebody that says that if I get enough votes, that I'll take the job. Consider all that. I know people are busy. I know parents are running around, shuffling the kids around. I know tomorrow's a busy day. Everybody's busy. I'm busy. Kevin's busy. Everybody is. But I would ask that you take the time tomorrow, November 5th. It's a Tuesday, to go out and vote for Dean Mazzarella. I would appreciate it. I'm asking you for it. And if you think your vote doesn't count, I think if there's any place that can look back and say your vote counts, it's right here in Leominster, Massachusetts.
Thank you for joining us, Mayor
Thank you,
Mazzarella.
Kevin,
The
for
election
doing
is
this.
yeah, you can have the mug. So that's another thing that Mr. Ricker missed out on. Now we can't take the mug. The election is tomorrow, November 5th. What's your prediction? What's going to be the turnout?
I have no, honestly, I think we've.
Is it going to be higher or lower than your stabilization fund percentage?
Oh, geez. I think it's going to be, the turnout would be higher than it was going to be.
Okay.
Like I said, I ran into so many people that said, oh, if you'll get 10 votes, you're all set. I said, no, that's not how it's, that's not how
You're
it's
going to hit 30%?
Oh, I don't know about that.
All right.
We'll see.
Thank you. Go out and vote tomorrow. Bye-bye.